There's this common image where the betrayed person walks in on their unfaithful partner in a compromising situation and gets the last laugh. Well, that's not how it went down for me. I was engaged to a woman who seemed very reserved, shy, and conservative. She was all about going to church on Sundays, practicing abstinence, and even refused to tell the smallest of lies. I was somewhat similar, also quiet and shy. She was the first person to ever show any interest in me, even if it was just a passing one. She claimed I was her first and only relationship. We had been together for 3 years, and she proposed to me halfway through the second year. I told her I needed some time to think, but then surprised her 2 weeks later by taking her back to the place where we first met and proposing officially. We decided to hold off on the wedding until we found a place to live together. Around 5 months after I proposed to her, I stopped by her apartment one morning to drop off her coat. Since I had a key, I let myself in. To my shock, I found her completely naked on top of a stranger. From that point on, everything became a blur to me. I honestly don't remember it very well. People tell me it's a form of repression. I do recall that the other man looked stunned. She glanced at me, smiled, and said something. I can't recall her exact words, but I do remember how they affected me. It's strange, really. Actually witnessing the infidelity didn't hit me as hard as whatever she said, but whatever it was, it hit me like a ton of bricks. The best way I can explain it is that my mind felt completely scrambled, like an egg. I couldn't put together a single coherent thought. It was incredibly painful, almost unbearable, and then it seemed to just shatter. All I could think about was wanting it to stop. I wanted my broken brain to stop tormenting me, so I walked away. Everything that happened after this point in the story was told to me later because I don't remember any of it. Apparently, I walked for about 3 miles until I reached the closest gas station. I bought a cheap imitation Zippo lighter and a small container, which I filled with gasoline from the pump. Then I left, found an empty lot nearby, poured the gasoline over myself, and tried to set myself on fire. It didn't work out because of 2 reasons. The gas station attendant had called an emergency number after realizing what I had purchased, and the knockoff Zippo lighter didn't have any fuel or flints in it. When the police officer arrived, they found me sitting on the ground, covered in gasoline, and absent-mindedly flicking the useless lighter. There wasn't much commotion with the emergency services once they realized the lighter wasn't functional. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in the hospital. They had a lot of questions for me to answer. Things got quite interesting after that incident. It's incredible how this kind of intense drama creates divisions within groups of people. Once the word got out about what had happened, all sorts of stories and rumors started circulating. So, based on what I've been told, which I take with a bit of skepticism, it seems like she was either cheating on me throughout the entire relationship or started when I told her I needed time to think about her proposal. However, I know for sure that it was happening at least from that point onward. Different people came forward with stories about her being involved with other men, and while some stories matched up, others didn't. I also received a bunch of stories dating back to when we first met, describing strange behavior from her. For example, there was one incident where she showed up at a friend's house, knocked on the door, and when nobody answered, she stood there in front of the door without moving for hours until a neighbor confronted her. I had no clue about any of this. Hearing all these stories did have a silver lining. I became aware of who I couldn't trust. I cut off contact with every person who approached me later to tell me about seeing her with other men. If they didn't think to inform me at the time, who knows what else they might be hiding. I also distanced myself from the people who supported her when they started stalking me in various ways. It got ugly. As a result of everything that happened, I've been going to therapy. The diagnosis is severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. My doctor tells me that I was essentially in an emotionally abusive relationship. I may admit to making mistakes and not being perfect, and I may believe that the relationship deteriorated partly due to my faults. Deep down, I carry an immense sense of guilt and completely hate myself. I genuinely feel like all the blame is on me. However, my doctor says that based on what I've shared about my time in the relationship, my strong sense of blame is a result of being conditioned by her emotional manipulation. When I reflect on everything without any romantic illusions, he's absolutely right. It's a strange mix of emotions. I used to love her, but hearing that statement also made me hate her. I worry because that hatred might fade over time, and then I'll be left alone with the heavy burden of guilt again. It's possible that I'll forget all the negatives, and because she was my first love, that love will probably never completely disappear. If that were to happen, it would devastate me. It would be as certain as any deadly disease. The incident with the gasoline wasn't just a one-time thing. I still have dark thoughts lingering in my mind. Waking up in the morning is the toughest part because that's when those thoughts are strongest. Even though I try to distract myself during the day, I can't escape them in my own dreams. To cope, I tell myself that if I truly want to die so badly, I could just stay in bed and wait for dehydration to take me in about 10 days. My longest record is around 4 days. Additionally, I have absolutely no appetite. I've lost a significant amount of weight, and I have to force myself to eat. Thinking about what happened in any way makes me extremely nauseous. It's mainly because of the depression. I didn't fully grasp how depression worked before all of this, but now I understand. It's like a cancer, eating away at the human will to live. I can't say for certain that I'll recover from this. I'm taking medication, but it's really just a temporary support. Therapy is helpful, though, and even though I had trust issues before all of this, there's no way I'll ever be able to completely get rid of them now. Oh well, that's how it goes. Second story. It happened about 3 years ago in August. I had been in a relationship with her for 3 years, and even though we didn't live together, we saw each other every day. She had a great kid who loved Legos and Xbox, just like me. I still sent him presents for special occasions, even after what happened. So it was a weekend when everything started. On Friday, 3 friends from SDSU came to visit me in Minnesota. They were Britton, John, and Ryan. The reason for their visit was a disc golf tournament happening on Saturday, and they would occasionally come to hang out with me. Ryan had recently gone through a painful divorce after discovering his wife was having an affair. It was a tough time for him, and he went through a lot of tears. Well, on that Friday, the guys and I played some frisbee golf to practice for the tournament while Jen, my girlfriend at the time, spent time with her child. After a few rounds of frisbee golf, we all went to the bar, had a few drinks, and then returned to my place to have a few more and relax. It was around 2 a.m. when we were all getting ready for bed. That's when Ryan decided to get up and leave. I asked him why he was leaving at such a late hour, and he paused before saying, "I'm going to sleep in my own bed. It's more comfortable." It sounded reasonable at the time because his parents lived in the same town as me, and a bed is definitely more comfortable than my couch, especially before an important frisbee golf tournament. I didn't think much of it, and then Britton and John went to bed, so I followed suit. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep. I was tired, but I thought it would be a nice surprise to bring breakfast to my girlfriend and then take a nap with her before a long tournament day that started at 11 a.m. So I drove to Burger King around 6 a.m. to grab some breakfast. When I pulled into her shared driveway with the person living above her, I noticed another car was parked in my usual spot. Initially, I thought it belonged to the people upstairs. I casually got out of my car and walked up to the door, knowing her boxer dog would start barking loudly, even though it's not the best guard dog. The element of surprise for breakfast was ruined. I quieted the dog and approached her bedroom door calmly, tapping on it and announcing that I had breakfast. I received no response, which confused me because the door was locked from the inside. I tapped a little louder, starting to worry. I went back outside and realized that the car in my spot belonged to Ryan. My heart sank. I literally dropped to my knees and cried dramatically. It was devastating, and at that moment, I heard someone lock the door behind me. I couldn't bring myself to get up. I stayed in that position for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, I got up and went to double-check Ryan's license plate, and it indeed belonged to him. I then walked to the side of the house and just collapsed. I didn't want to move or even drive away at that moment. My life had revolved around this woman and her child for the past few years, and it felt like everything I had built was gone. My mind kept replaying that same sentence over and over, or variations of it, for what felt like an eternity until I felt John's hand on my back while I lay in the grass crying. Apparently, Ryan had called him and informed him about what had happened. John helped me sit up and started talking to me outside, trying his best to say anything that would bring me comfort. Finally, around 10 a.m., I had run out of tears, energy, and patience. Jen and Ryan were still hiding in Jen's house, but I made the decision to leave. After all, I had to prepare for the Frisbee golf tournament, so with little to no sleep, hours of crying, and dark thoughts, I joined the tournament. The first 9 holes went fine with par after par. However, when it came to the last 9 holes of the course, I should mention that up until that day, I had never lost a Frisbee golf disc. I ended up losing 3 discs to water shots and finished 11 strokes over par. Another lousy part of the last 9 holes was that my parents were waiting at hole 18 tee box. They were interested to see their son actually compete in a sport since I never did during high school. I'm pretty sure my mother sensed that something was wrong while my dad seemed more focused on talking to people he knew there. I didn't place in the tournament, and I had hardly spoken since I left Jen's house that morning. I went back to my place, sat on my couch, and tried to take a nap, but it just wasn't happening. So I decided to play Xbox to distract my mind from everything. I could go on and on about the following months and how I felt, but I'm happy to say that I've moved on from that experience. If you were to ask me what I learned, I could say that I learned what true heartbreak feels like and how not to trust anyone. However, I have since found a wonderful woman whom I have learned to trust. I'm so happy that I can trust again. If there's one valuable lesson I've learned from this whole experience, it's to never give up. Eventually, things will get better, and the days will become brighter. Time is a powerful healer, and having close friends by your side also helps a lot. Ryan and Jen have both tried to apologize and express their feelings since then, and I have accepted their apologies. However, I've realized that I don't want either of them in my life anymore. They are still together to this day, and I genuinely wish them happiness. Edit. 2020. Here's an update on the people involved in this story, just for my own record. The girl I was with when I wrote this is now happily with the musician she left me for, but that's all in the past now. I'm currently happy and living in Denver with another amazing girl from Minnesota. Ryan and Jen are engaged, and I occasionally exchange messages with Jen. John is still married and has a child. Third story. The thing that made my situation different was that I had an idea of what I was getting into. Let's go back 2 weeks. Scratch that. Let's go back 2 years. I was living in a rundown trailer in the middle of a huge pine forest in rural Alabama. How did I end up there? Well, after graduating from a small high school in Louisiana, I took a year off to indulge in casual closeness and pills. Eventually, I had to face the reality that I couldn't sustain that lifestyle anymore. That's when an opportunity came up for me. My father offered me a cozy little place in the middle of nowhere and a respectable job managing one of his recently acquired Subway sandwich shops. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. There was a shortage of food service managers in the area, and I had no assets like a home, car, degree, or work experience. So my father got an employee who was committed to taking care of the trailer when he was in town and would work long hours in exchange for housing, food, and the use of a vehicle instead of a salary. In return, I had shelter from the weather, all the sandwiches I could eat, a car, and a nice mobile home to call my own in the midst of my interesting surroundings. I also met her. It didn't take long before I lost my job, got kicked out of my place, and had my car taken away. My father was really insistent that I should stay single, but I strongly believed that having a steady connection with someone was more important than those trivial worldly things. We lived in government-assisted housing with her mother, stepfather, and brother, and let me tell you, it wasn't just any government housing, my friend. It was government housing in rural Alabama. It was small, dirty, and filled with pets, but it was home. A year went by, and I was almost ready to start my new life as a security guard at a paper mill. She had a $300 ring on her finger, and she was carrying our son. On my birthday, she left. She said she needed space and that she would be staying at her friend's house. She conveniently left out the part about having to share a room with a guy who had been trying to win her over while I was busy working all day, sometimes neglecting her needs while trying to fulfill others. But I guess when you've spent most of your life without any money at all, working a 40-hour week probably seems unnecessary. In a town as small as a tiny gonorrhea nodule, rumors spread quickly. For a week, I was met with responses like, "I just need time away from you," or "You can't keep coming here, I need more time." I wasn't making any progress, and the rumors were starting to hurt. When her sister's ex-husband confirmed my worst fears, the anger was almost overwhelming. To me, it was the ultimate betrayal. I value loyalty and trust above all else. I had left behind a miserable life to start a new, even more difficult life of hard work just to be with and fully support this girl. At that time, I believed it meant something significant, and it was enough to make me go straight to the bank and withdraw all $100 from our joint account. I drove to her friend's house, knowing he would be there, and walked past her friend, who half-heartedly tried to confront me on the front porch. I entered the room where she was with him, and she quickly got out of bed and got dressed as I gave a nod to him. That was the first and last time I acknowledged his existence. She asked me what the heck I was doing there, and I handed her $50. I told her it was her share of our savings and that I would be leaving for Louisiana the next day. Needless to say, she was back home that evening. She tried to persuade me into having closeness, but I declined. Later on, she admitted that it hurt her deeply. I know. The next morning, I foolishly laid out my conditions for staying, and the one she couldn't comply with was that she had to promise to never hang out with the shirtless guy she had been fooling around with while deciding if she was ready to commit to only one person for the rest of her life. That sealed the deal and confirmed what should have already been a clear decision to get out of there. After taking a Greyhound bus, I found myself uncontrollably sobbing into my uncle's waterbed. It would take another 8 years before I allowed someone else to see my magnificent Johnson, if you catch my drift. But they say the first cut is the deepest, right? Fourth story. I met this girl, let's call her Nellie, while I was already in a relationship with another girl, let's call her Hermione, back in high school. Things weren't going well with Hermione, but she was really invested in our relationship. The three of us went on a road trip together, which was incredibly awkward because I was starting to have feelings for Nellie while still being with Hermione. After we returned from that situation that I shouldn't have put us all in, I ended my 9-month relationship with Hermione one evening. It wasn't a smooth breakup, as she even threatened to throw a concrete block at my windshield. Looking back, it was wrong to take them both on the trip, but I want to make it clear that I never cheated, and I believe I handled the situation as best as I could, considering my emotional immaturity at that time. A few weeks later, Nellie and I started a relationship just before heading to college together. Hermione also went to the same college initially, but she transferred out in the second year to date one of my longtime friends. I was happy for her and glad that she found someone who would appreciate her. Nellie and I had a 4-year relationship throughout college, which had its ups and downs, but was gradually turning into what I thought would be a lifelong commitment and marriage. Until everything fell apart in a matter of minutes. You know, Nellie would sometimes go back home without me to visit her family and friends. She even made a trip to her home country after 6 months into our relationship. Although she was mostly unreachable during these trips, and she had a flirtatious nature that initially attracted me to her, I trusted her and didn't really consider the possibility of her cheating. On the evening we broke up, Nellie had returned to our apartment from a trip to visit her friends and family. She was acting a bit strange when she came in, but shortly after her arrival, she jumped on me for some closeness. It was quick and different from our usual moments, so I asked her what that was all about. She sat on the bed trembling and said, "I think I might cheat on you." It was a strange thing to hear, but I appreciated that we were discussing a problem before it actually happened. I tried to dig deeper and understand why she felt that way. After talking things through, I concluded by saying, "Well, these are all things we can work on so that you don't cheat on me. Just to be sure you haven't cheated on me, right?" She responded with a hesitant no and avoided making direct eye contact. I asked again and again, and each time Her response seemed less sincere. When I asked for the fourth time, she finally admitted to it. I got angry. I punched our bedroom wall, but it only hurt my fist in the process. Turns out the wall was stronger than I thought, or maybe I'm just not that strong. Then I asked her how many times it happened. Once, she said. I pushed for more information. Once turned into twice, twice turned into 3 times. As my trust in her started to fade, I kept pressuring her, saying, "Are you sure it's only 3 times?" Look, I shouldn't have kept asking those questions, but at the time, that's what I wanted to know. It turned out to be more than 3 times, but I can't remember the exact number. Then I asked, "Since when?" That led us down a path, discussing the past few months, then the past few years, all the way back to the trip she took to her home country 6 months into our relationship. I realized that I had been cheated on for 3.5 years out of our 4-year relationship, with more people than I can count on one hand. I'm far from being a perfect person, and I clearly didn't meet her needs, but that situation hurt more than most things I've experienced in life. I told her she had a problem and suggested she seek therapy. I was hurt, but I genuinely cared about her well-being and any future relationship she might have, whether it's right or wrong. I told her to leave, so she stayed with a friend for a few nights and then came back. During that time, I did all the typical things like constantly calling her, wanting to figure things out, and pleading with her friend to understand why she would do something so hurtful. Eventually, she found a new place to live and moved out after about a week. I helped her with the move, assessed the value of our shared belongings, split them or exchanged money accordingly, and ended up stuck with a lease I couldn't afford that had just been renewed. As her punishment, I made her dreadlock my hair, enduring 22 hours of excruciating pain. It was a tedious task for her, but maybe it was even more of a punishment for me. But hey, I ended up with dreadlocks, got a raise to afford my apartment, and even got a dog. During my senior year of college, I had my doubts about finding someone else, since I lived a relatively introverted lifestyle. I wondered if I could meet someone before or after entering the real world. But then, 3 months later, I met Terry through a mutual friend in a class we had together. We've been together for more than 5 years now, and I couldn't be happier. It was a challenging experience, but it taught me a lot, and I'm in a much better place because of it.